Hi, folks. Hopefully you all can hear us. Hello to my co-presenters. We are super excited to be with you here this afternoon, and we're going to set up this PowerPoint. So again, my name is Dr. Marcelle Hayashida. I am a clinical psychologist by training, co-presenting with Nathaan Demers and Dr. Nathaan Demers and Dr. Meladee Garst, who's also with me at the University of California at Irvine. We had this idea many months ago to think about the wait list at college campuses. You know, we were all passionately devoted to mental health at universities and colleges, and we realized that there has been a perception of a mental health crisis, if you will, on college campuses. And we thought months and months ago, prior to COVID-19, that it'd be good to talk about how do we manage this issue with technology, how can we engage students, how can we use community resources and apps and websites to deal with this issue? So back then it seemed very relevant to us. Flash forward to April 1st, 2020, it seems even more relevant now. So we are super excited to be with you all here. We'll go to the next slide, please. So again, as the instructions were, we would love to just get a sense of who you are and who's listening and watching in with us today, where you're from, perhaps what your title is, and how have you been addressing the mental health issues on your campus, particularly post kind of COVID-19, and how have you been engaging students online? We would love to be able to share some of your ideas with the rest of the audience and hopefully to take some information from you as well. Next slide, please. So here are some objectives that we created for today's presentation. We wanted first to have you understand some of the chief driving factors behind the student mental health issues on campus. We also wanted for you to be able to examine several well-being technologies and platforms that your campus could explore in helping to meet student mental health needs. We'll talk you through some of the questions that you might want to ask a vendor, thinking about cost and accessibility and diversity. We'd like for you to think about some novel approaches that your counseling center service could use to deliver services and things that you might want to share with your campus leadership, or if you are campus leadership, things that you might want to talk to with your staff. And we also want to talk really fundamentally about upstream approaches to wellness. We know that we send our students to counseling centers when they are depressed or anxious, but how can we maybe head off some of these issues as well so that you don't have such a huge wait list? So thinking about upstream, proactive, preventative approaches to mental health and wellness. Next slide, please. Okay, so we'll start really briefly and quickly with things that I think if you're joining us, almost 200 of you, hopefully you already know, and that is that we believe and we've seen that the levels of mental health issues among college students has been growing from year to year. Next slide, please. The national landscape is characterized by several things, right? An increase in the load that our centers are bearing, reduced access, hard to get in, hard to find available appointments. We also, and I want to recognize this as well, hopefully many of you are providers and you can speak directly to the burnout perhaps that you are experiencing, we are experiencing staff turnover, and we've had to be flexible around our models, right? I think in the old days, I've been in higher ed almost 2 decades now, can't stand thinking about that. But you know, I think we've seen a difference in models. I think before we could say that students could get a full round of therapy, perhaps be in therapy and treatment for months and months, perhaps throughout the academic year even. And now we're noticing that we maybe need to get students in and through and referred in a way that doesn't feel great for many of us. We've seen nationally over the past few years that enrollment growth has averaged just about 5%. Whereas counseling center utilization has ranged and has increased anywhere from 30, say, to 40%. And that's from CCMH, and you can find this readily available online. Next slide.
Great, this is Nathaan. I'm going to chime in for 1 second. We're just going to switch who's screen sharing for 1 second, so sorry for the quick pause. But I am going to take over the screen share if that works for everyone. If we could just confirm that that is working. In just a second, that would be great. So, how is that for everyone?
We're good. We're in. We're good. So I'll
Great,
continue
perfect.
with,
Thank you.
absolutely. So I'll continue with the previous slide. And we were talking about just some various statistics that we've seen, again, counseling center utilization outpacing our enrollment growth. We've seen that that's unfortunately some of our students who leave campuses for mental health reasons haven't used campus supports. We've seen that faculty and staff aren't quite sure how to make an appropriate referral to supports. We've also seen suicide now as a second leading cause of death among college students on college campuses, followed, the first is as accidents. And we've also seen that students are saying that their mental health had a negative impact on their academic performance. Forward. Next slide. It's going to move forward. Thanks. And then we've also seen
there's just a little delay.
delay, no problem. We've also seen that, and this is consistent with our own data, I suspect it's consistent with your campus as well. The top concerns at counseling centers now, about 60% of students are coming in with some anxiety, about 48% are depressed, and about 46.9% are presenting with stress, is broadly defined. Forward. In the last year, we've all seen, again, at the NCHA data, which many of us participate in and use yearly. Again, this has been rising every year, that students are considering suicide, feeling overwhelming anxiety, about 8.6% are intentionally self-injuring, and again, about 45% are saying they've been so depressed that it was difficult to function. So the big question everyone always asks me is, why is this new? Has this been something that's just happened? Why do our students seem to be presenting with more mental health issues? I believe these slides will be available to you later, so you can take a deeper dive into this, but there are all kinds of issues ranging from technology. I've heard some recent data. There's been a great book on iGen, this generation that kind of grew up with the iPhones, and that perhaps use of technology may actually be causing some of the distress in our students, again, around downward social comparisons, around technology interfering with sleep, so that perhaps technology is part of this, substance use and abuse, our social and political climate, right? There's the contentious issues on our campuses around politics, parental expectations, parenting styles, parents hovering in some ways, students don't know how to do their own laundry, don't know how to problem solve. I think that's painting a broad brush for many students who are very independent and self-sufficient and very resilient. But I think that explains some of the issues. We also have seen, I guess, even on our own campus, students who are working multiple jobs, hard to study, hard to maintain your wellness, hard to sleep. And then again, of course, there's been a lot of trauma. I think we are noticing that students are coming in having all kinds of traumatic experiences ranging from abuse, parental mental health issues, parental imprisonment, so all kinds of things that students are coming into college having already experienced. And the list kind of rounds up in the next slide, just a few other explanations. Ranging from the grueling admissions process, right? So we've seen a lot of acceptance letters. This is acceptance season right now. Really happy for some of these students, but they've been working themselves very hard over the past 12 years, maybe 3 and 4 in particular. Pressure to succeed or fail. There were some culture-bound aversions then to help seeking. I think there's some students who are underrepresented in our counseling centers. There are better treatments for behavioral health. So 30 years ago, your students with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder perhaps would not have been able to finish or matriculate. And now they are, but they still need a lot of support. And then again, I think for many of our students of color, our low income, our first gen students, that they are on campus but are experiencing oppression and prejudice that exists in the rest of the country. And then just a few more thoughts here. Again, I think many of you are experiencing some waitlist data. This is from AU/CCC a couple of years ago, that many campuses have a very lengthy waitlist. And so you can see that 10 campuses that were surveyed here, about 7% said that their waitlist was more than 35 weeks. That's an entire academic year. Many counseling centers are experiencing wait lists of 11 or 25 weeks. And if you're thinking about a quarter, UCI is on a quarter system. If 14% of the schools were having students wait 10 weeks, that's an entire academic quarter just to kind of get in the door. And then, um, to kind of wrap part of this up, this is not new, right? Many of us who've been in college mental health for many years have certainly seen that the landscape has been shifting in many ways. I think we want to be clear that our presentation is not about meeting everybody's need and all the demands as quickly and expeditiously as possible to make everybody happy. That's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about managing expectations, being clear about what your campus can and cannot do, and thinking of new ways to think about realistic ways for your center and your campus to serve your students. So we're taking the perspective that mental health issues have always been present, but that we need to engage students in a very new way. They are using their phones, texting, web, apps, and we've also been pleased to see that stigma has reduced and has decreased in lots of really important ways. And so we want to think about, how do we face this challenge? We don't want to think about it as a mental health crisis, although I know it's often phrased as such, but how do we rise to the challenge that our students are presenting for us?
Great. Well, thank you for that great introduction. And just to confirm, can everyone hear and see me okay?
Yes.
Great, perfect. Well, thank you. And I do have to apologize. My 2.5-year-old is about to go down for his nap. He tends to sing a lot in the next room. Hopefully that isn't a distraction, but we will persist regardless. But before diving into a little bit of what I'll be chatting about, I just want to give a little bit more of an introduction. So again, my name is Nathaan Demers. I'm a clinical psychologist. And after working in a traditional sense as a clinician for a number of years, including in college counseling, I actually joined a nonprofit whose mission was to bring quality mental health services to rural and underserved areas in the western 15 states and American territories in the Pacific. And that's where I got a lot of training and, of course, firsthand experience in delivering mental health interventions at scale. And then from there, about 4 years ago now, I was lucky enough to meet a group of individuals at Grit Digital Health who were looking to achieve that same goal. And it was kind of a no-brainer for me to jump on that train. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But as we already alluded to, technology is so important in today's campuses. And again, it's ironic we made this many months ago before anyone even know what COVID-19 was. But now, of course, it is just so essential. And in one model that we used to use to assess the needs and sort of undertake a gap analysis and needs assessment in providing services is called the 3 A's. I have 3.5. I'm deciding just to stick with 3 A's today. So they're awareness, availability, and acceptability. And one thing that's very interesting is technology is very uniquely positioned to overcome these 3 barriers, which often prevent individuals, and of course in our situation, students, from getting to care. So awareness makes a lot of sense. Are they aware of the services that are offered on campus through the university? When it comes to availability, if a student is aware, do they have the ability to actually connect with those services? What sort of barriers might be existing, whether that's wait lists, different insurance statuses, geography, if I'm an online student, maybe an international student. And then the third is acceptability. So if I can overcome the first 2 potential barriers, is it quote unquote acceptable for me to seek this care? Obviously, we do see that our data is showing that stigma is on the decline, but we also know when it comes to internal stigma, that's still unfortunately alive and well for many students. So with that, how do we help increase the acceptability of seeking care? So how technology can really help overcome these barriers is pretty simple and straightforward. I think we can think of this in our everyday use of technology. When it comes to awareness, whether we like it or not, this is where students are. This is where they spend a big part of their days. I apologize for that typo, ARA, that is supposed to be R. Interestingly, we can also really reach hard to reach populations, whether that's commuter students who tend to come to campus, take their class, and then head home quickly because they're taking care of family or working another job. Therefore, they simply often don't see the services that are offered because they're not going to the student center or walking through the counseling center, for example. And then obviously awareness campaigns, being able to deploy those digitally has huge impact because we can really meet students where they live, work, and play, rather than only on campus in those traditional senses. When it comes to availability, this is a short list. It can be so much longer, but everything from doing things like simple triage functioning, making sure that students are getting to the right doors on campus at the right time, because we know that counseling isn't always the right referral. And maybe if a student's extremely stressed about academics, making sure that they go to academic services first or speak with their advisor is a proper referral before walking into the counseling center. We also all know very well all about telehealth, whether we like it or not. I think everyone's been somewhat thrown into that world, which, regardless of where you stand as a clinician, it definitely has benefits in increasing availability. And then there's also things like evidence-based apps that can really help manage students who are on the lower acuity side of the spectrum. And then when it comes to acceptability, there's also a number of benefits. We can provide psychoeducation at scale so that we can make mental health much more approachable. Simply sharing things like knowing 1 in 4 college students has a diagnosable behavioral health condition can be incredibly helpful for students, and 1 in 12 experiences suicidal ideation throughout their time on campus. We can obviously deploy some skill building, which again makes therapy feel a little bit less scary. We can do workshops, we can do webinars like we are today. And then awareness campaigns and stigma reduction. Jed has done some amazing campaigns. There's a lot of just great work happening out there that can really decrease stigma and make this topic much more approachable. So a couple other reasons just to really hit the nail on the head that technology is so uniquely positioned. Again, we all know this, I don't need to expand upon it, but students, whether we like it or not, and of the about 200 of you who are ever on here, who doesn't have this within arm's reach right now? It's our reality, whether we like it or not. But something else that's interesting is today's students, Gen Z as well as millennials, really grew up with Google in their pockets. So they're very much used to knowing all the answers. And why this is such an important insight for us is we know about 85 to 90% of students are looking online for any health-related information that includes both mental and physical health before they take any sort of action in connecting to an in-person or on-campus support. So with that, if a student goes to a campus website and does something, searches for something like anxiety, depression, or something more nuanced like prescription drug abuse, and that search result pops up with nothing, that is unfortunately further stigmatizing that experience. We also know that about 85 to 90% of students tend to go to Google, not their own university websites, when they're looking for a lot of this information. And the slight danger in that is we know, hopefully this video works. If it's not, anyone can please chime in. I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a lag. But we know when it comes to students going to, let's say, the App Store or Google Play, that there are literally hundreds and hundreds of apps that pop up when this is just a single search for anxiety. And we know that students likely aren't going into the fine print, reading the terms of use, what's happening with their data, let alone looking into the about pages and learning, does this organization have, let's say, a clinician on staff? Was there a randomized controlled trial? What are the costs? And all that. So it's very important, the more that we can support students with platforms that we are endorsing and bringing to the table, the more likely we are to really be able to protect our students and help them to our best of ability. So with that, the challenge becomes, how do we promote mindful use of technology? So I, ironically, as a psychologist, don't love what technology is doing for students and society at large. The reality is this is where we are. And if we don't meet students on their terms, there's a good chance that we're simply not going to meet them. So how do we help students use technology mindfully, but also refer them to those in-person supports for real connections at those times? And one model that we use when we're designing any sort of platform, and we really encourage you all to keep this in mind as you are vetting tools, and just to give a sneak peek, we'll be going through several different types of tools and providing suggestions as to questions to ask as you are vetting these. But we have to make sure that we are balancing the user's goals with potential health outcomes, both positive and negative, as well as, with organizational and technical requirements. So just to really spell this out a little bit, I want to use a quick example. So everyone, I'm sure, is familiar with the Apple Watch. When Apple was doing a lot of their research, they asked, what is one of the #1 things that you as a user would want to be able to do? And one of the most common responses was, I want to be able to check my email really quickly on this. If I'm in a meeting, I don't want to pull out my phone or pull up my computer. The reality is we know that there's a very direct correlation between the number of times that an individual checks their email and their experienced level of stress. So you can see right there that there's already some tension between a user goal and a health outcome. Another example is the game Candy Crush, which I'm sure many of you know or remember, at least saw students playing, let's say, it's probably cool or in vogue about a year, 2, maybe 3 ago. I'm definitely dating myself. But while that was a nice, fun thing to do in the present, we also know that that did not ultimately lead to any beneficial health outcomes. One last one I'll share is social media, whether it's Instagram, Snapchat, take your pick. We know a lot of students are engaging in what we call social snacking. So when a student might be feeling lonely, they're going into an app, scrolling, and getting that short-term need for connection, but that's not helping them fulfill their long-term desires for connection. And then, of course, we have to fit these two things within organizational technical requirements. So obviously, FERPA, HIPAA, making sure that it's easy to deploy on campus. It works for your counseling center just as much as RAs and other systems of care on campus. So if you can, we'll be sharing this presentation, but make sure whenever you're thinking about any decisions related to this, that you're asking yourself those 3 questions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Meladee to jump into our first area of technologies.
Thanks, Nathaan. Again, I'll do a brief introduction. My name is Dr. Meladee Garst, and I'm the Assistant Director of Student Educational Programming and Outreach at the University of California, Irvine Counseling Center. And I'm really excited to be here with you all and virtually. And so again, as Marcelle highlighted at the beginning, and even Nathaan, is we were talking about this months ago, and it's very pertinent now, and even how we're talking about it now is a different approach than what we were planning on in person. And so I'm going to be specifically talking about how we use technologies to bring more campus mental health and well-being to our students through a variety of platforms. And so again, I think right now we're all thinking and having to be creative in ways that we create accessibility of services virtually and remotely, but also how do we make people aware of what our services are remotely and virtually. And so again, I'm going to present some of the information that we were originally going to do, but as well as create some additional content around COVID-19 and how this can pertain in today's day and age. Go ahead, next slide. We're first going to start talking about online self-help and therapy programs. And so in today's day and age, most outreach directors of college counseling centers, vice-chancellors of health and wellness are being bombarded with whatever the latest and greatest online self-help tool is. And so I will start off by saying this is no way a marketing or advertising for one platform or the other, but more just an awareness of what is out there. And as a way to show that there is variety out there, to pick what meets your center's needs as well as your campus needs. And I think that's important to be aware of. And so we're going to highlight a couple of the most, what I would say are the most popular or well-known right now amongst college counseling centers as well as college campuses. A lot of them are similar in nature, but each have their varying degree of differences in what they can offer. And so again, this is not a push to go one way or the other, and I would encourage you all to do your own research to what's going to meet your needs. But what's great about these online self-help, some have therapy or therapy-assisted components, is that it comes back to that accessibility piece that Nathaan was talking about. This is a great way to provide prevention and well-being resources to your whole campus community, but in particular, those students who may not need counseling, but may just need some of that psychoeducation to reinforce healthy and positive behaviors. Or this might be the gateway to get those more targeted populations that actually need therapy into the counseling center doors. And so I think that's the great piece about online self-help, is it can be a great way to create that accessibility piece, depending on the various needs of different students. Some of the most popular ones right now are therapy assisted online, which is called TAO for short. I'll admit I know the most about that one because that is what we have here at UCI. So I may talk a little more in depth about that one. There's also WellTrack, which is a little more depression focused and has modules and education on depression. There's Silver Cloud, which is more of an encompassing program that targets towards targeted populations, and they adjust the content based on the population. There's Headspace, which is targeted towards stress and sleep tracking, as well as different insurance companies may have their own telehealth or self-help programs. For instance, the student health insurance here at UCI has Live Health Online, which provides some online telehealth and physical health services, as well as educational services. But one thing I want to highlight about all of these variety of services is that most of them are CBT based, and so are using research and evidence-based treatment approaches to provide psychoeducation and self-help resources. Most of them in the platforms have self-report assessment options, They also use self-guided courses or module approaches to provide psychoeducation, interactive activities, skill building. And I would say most of them, their content is based around addressing depression, anxiety, stress management. Again, where the nuances are is that in the different platforms that are available, they may have more modules available on relationships, alcohol and drug abuse, sleep hygiene, things like that. And then most of them, I will say too, also use mindfulness exercises and libraries that are available. They all have tracking and log systems, which could be really helpful. For instance, like a sleep log, a mood tracker, a behavioral activation chart tracker. So again, they all have these logging systems in place to help, one, to the user show their progress over time, but also being able to incorporate some of the skills that they're getting from the courses in the module into their tracking of their progress. And then again, as I mentioned, depending on the platform, there is a degree of a therapy assisted side. So this is where I will speak more from TAO, as I have the experience of using TAO. And with us going remotely about 2 weeks ago, that has been our saving grace in that we were actually only primarily using the self-help side of TAO and encouraging clients that were coming into the center to use the modules in conjunction with therapy. And then lo and behold, 2.5 weeks ago, with the pandemic, we had to figure a way to go remote. And what was great is the TAO system had HIPAA compliant Zoom embedded into it already. And so that was really helpful for us in transferring our services remotely to where we were able to use that to help provide telehealth therapy to our campus population. And so not all of them have that platform or that option, but those will be, again, the things that you look at based on what your center needs are and your campus needs are. And we were lucky enough that we had that program that made for that easy transition. And so again, I think it's a big decision. It's not one that's easy to make, but I think you just have to look at what your needs are and knowing that there is a variety of options out there. So I literally feel like there's a grocery store of online self-help programs that you could go down, and you're going to have to figure out based on price, quantity, ingredients used, if you will, what works for you and your campus. And can we go to the next slide? So again, when we're talking about online self-help programs, Nathaan was highlighting earlier, what about the applications, right? I know oftentimes in our center, whether it's when I'm in my clinician role or as the outreach director, we're constantly being asked, what app should we use? What's a good app for sleep hygiene? What's a good app to manage anxiety? And as Nathaan demonstrated in his video, there's a slew that pop up in your app store, right? When you put in anxiety tracker or sleep hygiene, but which one should I choose? And what's hard, I think, for us clinicians is we oftentimes don't have the time available to go in and completely vet an app, right? And check it out. I know for myself and my clinical work, I have about 3 apps that I tend to refer to, and it's because I've gone in and I've used them myself. I've been able to do the research, but I know there's so many other great opportunities or possibilities out there. And so I think that's where what we're talking about here is CyberGuide. CyberGuide is actually a new app that is becoming available that does all of that vetting process for you. The CyberGuide platform, what they essentially do is you can type in the name of an application and it's going to give you information on the utility of the app, the pros and cons of the app, whether they used evidence-based treatment in their app, whether it's legit, or is this just something that somebody made in their basement and put it out there and it has no actual bearings to it. And it's all right there, and it kind of gives you a score, I believe. And Marcelle might be able to speak to this a little bit more on its usefulness. So even here, I know it's probably going to be hard to see, so when you get the actual PowerPoints, but they've already kind of have a flyer made for COVID-19 mental wellness apps, and like whether the application is free, if it's given a limited free to subscription right now during COVID-19, which a lot of the apps are doing, whether it costs, if there's certain features within the app that cost, and then there's some that are free, but all that information is handed to you, which I think could be really great for counseling centers right now when we're having to create awareness and accessibility of remote options. Here is an option where you can go into CyberGuide, look up some apps that might be legit and reasonable for your campus population, and then being able to provide those on your websites, on your social media, or even just when you're doing telehealth services for your clients. It does look like we have a question here, so if you can give me a second. Okay, so the question here says, if TAL is being used for offering therapy sessions, how are you handling licensing if your students are out of state? Many licenses prevent counselors from practicing with people across other state lines. I think that's a great question. So the way we're implementing that is we have a strategic 6 questions that we go through with each of our clients, ensuring and asking that they're in state, that they have in the state of California, for instance, that they provide us with the address with where they're located. Of course, they could be fibbing and we have to go on kind of the honor system, but we have made our clients aware currently that we're not able to provide telehealth services across state lines. Now, you can go in depth and there has been loosening of state laws as well as federal laws around practicing across state lines given the current circumstances. And I know I just lost what it's called. What is the overall licensing board? ABPP?
Oh, ABAP. Yeah.
Thank you. They have created an online updated document of what states are loosening their licensing restrictions to allow therapists to practice across state lines. So I would encourage you to go to that website for that document. But in particular, in our center, we have made our clients aware that we're not being able to practice across state lines. And if they are in need of continued services, that we're trying to get them connected with services in their hometown or in their state. And I believe there was one other question. Online self-help. Although online self-help is accessible and students are aware, most of our clients still want and desire face-to-face contact, correct? Suggestions on how to distinguish who can be the best served for online self-help and how to convince students to use them. You know, I think that's really great, and something that I think we'll also get into here in a little bit when we talk about one session appointments is again, I think it's all about the delivery. I think we face this even in the counseling center world when we're trying to pitch groups. Everybody just wants one session, right? So we got to figure out, where I kind of tell my staff, we got to be car salesmen. We got to figure out how can we sell this as this is the best option for you, the best treatment option. And I think that goes based on our comfortability with selling the product. If you don't believe in group and you don't really like group, you're not probably going to sell it the best way. And I feel like in our center, we've had to get our staff comfortable with TAO, knowing what TAO is, knowing how to talk about it, because then they're going to be able to make, I think, a better pitch of it, as well as being able to sell it. Can we go to the next slide? So next we're going to be talking about a few questions just to highlight when you're trying to figure out what self-help or therapy program or app is best for you. Things to think through, I think, are the cost and sustainability. A lot of time there's a pricing model where you get a discount for the first year and then you go back to a regular pricing. And so I think you got to think about what works for your center as well as your overall institution. One thing I would put in here is thinking about how that program could be used across campuses where there might be able to be a shared cost pricing. For instance, one of the great things about TAO is that we've also been able to get it utilized within our student health center, our housing department, as well as our student conduct department in particular. And so then again, since it's being utilized in multiple departments, we can all pitch in on the cost of the program. I think you got to look at data privacy, in particular if you're going to use therapy assisted side. Is it HIPAA compatible? Most of the time, the way you can kind of distinguish this, and I'll admit I'm not completely versed in this, is whether the company has a BAA, which is a business associate agreement in place. That oftentimes means that they have thought through privacy and maintaining privacy to be HIPAA compatible. Is it customizable? So again, what are your needs? What things do you see for your campus changing in 5 years? Is this platform going to be able to be adjusted as your campus needs change? Safety protocols, this in particular comes into place when we talk about assessments that are offered within the platform, and in particular, if there's risk questions that are being asked in those. Who's monitoring that? Is that available all the time? Can you remove those assessments if there is risk questions available in them? Utilization, so what's the utilization data showing? Promotion, so again, are you having to create all the marketing? Is there marketing already internally created through buying the licensing agreement? Diversity inclusion, so again, in the videos and the education videos that are oftentimes used in this, are they using people who look different, who speak different, who come from different walks of life? And so making sure that we're being multiculturally sensitive and that we're being to our campus populations. And then self-guided modules versus therapy assisted. Okay, so nextly, and I'm going to try to go through this quickly, so I apologize that we probably won't be able to go in as much depth as originally planned. So right now, we're having to think outside the box and be creative about how we can meet people and get them information virtually. And some centers may already have social media platforms created, so this may be redundant or may give you new ideas. And so I think creating a social media presence is important, given what Nathaan and Marcelle both said, is that that's where our students are. For better or for worse, right? That we oftentimes see them walking around campus, having their phones up, they're glued to them. And as Nathaan highlighted, that could also be a detriment, right? We want them to interact face to face, but how can we use it to our advantage when we're talking about reducing stigma, getting the information out, and giving them resources? And that's how I see us utilizing social media, is for those benefits, making them aware of the services and the resources that are available on campus, not only in the counseling center, but across our other units or departments in student affairs. How can we do awareness weeks so that we can do prevention work, as well as how can we just bring wellness? I mean, I'll admit I'm on social media and sometimes there's just a bunch of garbage, right? And just a lot of junk. So how can we create a little positivity in the midst of our news feeds. And that's where I think us as counseling centers, us who have that, hopefully that awareness of bringing some of that positivity in, can do that. And I think that's through either curated content that we are able to download for free, as well as creating our own content. And so there's different ways you can go about this. And I apologize that I'm going to talk through this quickly just for the sake of the program. But I think you can create your own center memes, you can download things, you can have different daily themes, and that's how we approach it here at UCI. Mondays are Mindfulness Mondays, Tuesday are TED Talk Tuesdays, Wednesdays as well as Wellness Wednesdays, Thursday is Tao Thursday, and Friday is Feel Good Friday. So we post around those different themes, and we post content we create, as well as pictures of our staff interacting on campus in different capacities, whether it's at our tabling events, supporting our other student affair departments and their initiatives. And so I think one great thing of also being online, not only in reducing stigma, providing education and awareness, but it also gives a face to the counseling center. And I think sometimes more than ever, that's important, is showing that we are humans too, and that we're not these scary people behind closed doors. And so a lot of times the posts that we get the most action or reshares or likes are when it's just pictures of us staff out tabling or participating in some kind of initiative on campus, because it gives a face to a name. Can we go to the next question or next slide, sorry.
Yep, and there was one question that came in. I'll just read it for you. Creating an online presence, how do you manage risk of allowing students to comment on social media when you're out there as the counseling center?
We block all comments. That's one way you can do it. Or again, so since we don't manage it 24/7, students cannot send a private message through our social media. So that's one way. You can also, I was at a previous institution and we actually allowed the messaging, but an auto response came up that said, this is not monitored. Someone will usually get back to your message within 24 hours. If you're in need of risk or crisis services, here's a link to crisis services. So there's ways that you can have auto responses kick back, or you can turn off all features for responses. This is one place I want to kind of highlight right now, because I think it's probably more important now than ever, is the use of educational videos. And so you can go about this in different ways. I think there's more formal ways of doing educational videos and informal. And I'll kind of start off with the more informal route, which I kind of say is like the new approach to brochures and pamphlets. As we know, we can access our newspapers online now versus in hand. We're getting a lot of our information at our fingertips. How can we do that? Through educational videos. And online social media research shows that you should make videos 3 minutes or less. Most people do not sustain focus on social media for longer than 3 minutes. They keep scrolling. So how can we get them the information they need at their fingertips real quickly? And I think too, another approach to this is doing Facebook or Instagram live videos at your events. It makes it easily accessible to people, as well as, like I said, it kind of shows off and gives face to a name. So if we talk about Sleep Awareness Week, come to our tabling event. Well, let's do a Facebook live video of our actual tabling event so people can see what it means and what it really is. And these can be pre-taped. So like it's information that's accessible at the click of a button. You guys will be able to click on these videos later, but I don't think we have the time to show them. We can maybe show just maybe 25 seconds of that bigger one, Nathaan. One of the things that we're initiating here at the Counseling Center is Feel Good Friday tip, to where our staff is literally in their homes. We all picked a tip of the day for Friday, and we recorded these on our iPhones. It was as simple as that, to show that we're in quarantine as well, and we're human, we're real, and we're trying to feel good on Fridays as well. And so our staff have created Feel Good Friday tips, and here's just a little snip clip of one.
Hopefully the audio will come through.
I'm one of the staff psychologists at the UCI Counseling Center. This video kicks off our Feel Good Friday video series where several of us staff members share with you tips for self-care and just ways to feel good, especially with everything going on in the world today. So my tip for you is to start a gratitude journal or a list of things that you're grateful for at the end of the day.
Okay, so just to give you a hint, those can be in depth, those can be scheduled. They will have closed captioning on them. I see someone, how are you in compliance with ADA? You can do closed captioning features, in particular if you record these on Zoom. Zoom allows for closed captioning, YouTube does as well, or you have them scripted to where your staff person, your center can script them. We'll go faster over this because I think the referral resources is going to be important, Nathaan, to maybe highlight. So again, I think for the sake of time, you've got to start where it works for you. When we talk about being innovative with online technology means, and there's different ways of going about that. And so whether that's the use of an online self-help program, using more app-based resources within your center, going on social media and using social media as, I would say, an outreach tool. That's how we approach it here at the Counseling Center at UCI. So using it as a tool to get that information out there, as well as educational videos. One of the things I didn't get a highlight in the previous slide is actually partnering with your online education program, how you can create taped outreach presentations so that those resources can be available to distance learners, as well as our commuter students who may not readily be able to come into outreach events on campus. Next slide. It looks like we're having a little delay. And so again, I think you might be thinking in particular with some of these videos and social media, I don't have a marketing and advertising degree. How can I be expected to do this? Again, I think sometimes we're stepping into anxiety, but I think in those areas, but I think one of the things you could look at is, can you create some applied learning experiences in hiring a marketing student where they can use some of this content for course credit or towards their portfolios, if you will, partnering with other departments. I think too, what's been great about our staff is we have a couple of our staff members who love this sort of stuff. It's a side hobby for them. So I've really been able to tap into our staff members' alternative skills, if you will, to help us create social media marketing and create videos. There's also great and easy platforms. So if you don't have anybody who's interested in this and you're gonna, as the outreach director or the communications coordinator or just the staff member who's taking this on, there's great platforms to help assist that, such as Canva, PowerPoint, Pontoon makes really great, easy content and videos. And I think the biggest thing I would say is start small. If you're not on any social media platforms, don't get on all of them right now. Start off with one. So maybe it's start off with Facebook, start off with Twitter, and build your way up. I think that can be really helpful. You can go ahead and go to the next slide, Nathaan. Start small. I think you need to be consistent. So again, being aware of the time that's needed to creating content, building content, that sort of thing. So how am I going to be able to sustain this over time? Social media can also be a great way to build partnerships across campus. So not only you sharing your events, but sharing theirs and vice versa. So if you think about your own timeline and your own social media, when you tag someone, it goes to their news feed. That's a great thing about using this as a way too, is when I tag, let's say the Student Affairs unit or the Center for Student Health and Wellness promotion, it then goes into their news feed. And so then I'm reaching their followers as well. So then that also increases followers over time. go on ahead. I'll let Nathaan start to take over. We're going to talk about some digital referring tools, which I think is important now, especially given the question that we had earlier about students are moving out of dorms, they're going home, they're crossing lines. How can I get them referral resources? And I think we can just go into the third-party one, Nathaan.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the same thing. So thank you for the transition. And as Meladee really pointed out, one thing that has always been important, but it's really important in today's world, especially in light of those licensing requirements across state lines, is third-party referral tools. So at a very high level, what tools, and as with Meladee, there's a number of tools out there. I'm just personally familiar with Thriving Campus, but that's the one I'm going to talk about. I know there's ShrinkSpace as well as several others out there. But what these are third-party platforms that actually go ahead and identify a provider network within specific geographic areas where campuses are. So with that, rather than, historically, I know in the institutions I worked at, we had an Excel spreadsheet, or sometimes people had a printed binder. And of course, those things don't update. Oftentimes, they don't include which insurances are accepted. If a provider moved, if a provider is no longer doing intakes and things like that. So all of these third-party tools are a live database that you essentially don't have to manage. So the providers are in it. For example, Thriving Campus has over 80 campuses and about 4,500 providers. So with that, and when students go to their home communities, this is also a great way for students to access providers without worrying about those state line issues. So I know I'm going very quickly through this, but I want to make sure that we're covering the breadth of content that we had hoped to. So again, we will be sharing these slides. The other thing, as we mentioned, is that there are many insurers which provide telehealth services, which was, as you can imagine, have seen an incredible uptick in their utilization. Just being most familiar with United Healthcare, they offer HealthiestYou by Teledoc, which includes both physical healthcare as well as mental health care. And one thing that's really nice from my perspective is, as you know, most campuses offer an insurance plan, and these telehealth services tend to come at no cost for students at all, if they have that plan. And for students who might still be on their parents' plan or have their own plan, often they can access it with a copay. The last time I checked, which was a little while ago, was HealthiestYou. It was about $45 or $60 for initial intakes, which is reasonable on the medical side. And I believe it was $85 or $90 for intake in counseling. One question coming in from Kayla, question on third-party referral tools. Are these also helpful for rural areas? Is it worthwhile to go the third-party route? From my perspective, it is absolutely worth at least exploring it. Because these third-party resources, when they do get contracts, again, to the best of my knowledge, they go ahead and do that work. They have some really slick ways to recruit providers, even in rural areas, and that takes that off of your plate. So I would absolutely say it's worth doing some of your research. And Meladee, if it's okay, as you mentioned Live Health Online, in the interest of time, I'm just going to pass on this. The other thing I'd just like to mention, and Kayla, this actually really can apply to you all. One thing we've seen is that there are a lot more student assistance programs popping up, some of which include telehealth. So with that, think of an employee assistance program, which provides everything from counseling centers to legal help to work-life balance resources. A lot of those are moving towards providing services for campuses. And many of those are smaller campuses, rural schools. We actually have several community colleges in very rural areas as part of our network, and they have been looking into, and some are already working with student assistance programs. So this is just an example, IBH solutions. Again, there's many out there, and we'd encourage you to do your research. At a very high level, because I think these questions are some of the most important things to help arm you as you're making these decisions, I want to quickly go over these. When it comes to the referral tools, understanding the pricing model, of course, is incredibly important. Getting a feel for how big is that provider network, both understanding how big that network is within your area, and now more than ever, making sure that they do have providers in all 50 states, so that when students are traveling, or going to their home communities to learn in place, they can still have access. You can also ask about international students. That often has a number of other challenges, but it's worth asking. Some other very important questions, making sure that you have an understanding of how those clinicians are credentials. Also, how are grievances handled? Do you have the ability to block a provider, for example, if the student has a poor experience? Are there any safety protocols in place for once you say, hey, student, I'd like you to see this person, or they identify that, is there any closed loop so that you know that that process actually did happen? And are there any safety protocols in the middle? But then the last two questions that are so important, and I would say are so important for everything that we are talking about today, is asking yourself when you're making this decision to move forward with any sort of digital technology, how does it make the process easier for students? Make sure that you view the process from a student's perspective. Even better yet, if you can get a student to use the tool and give you their gut, that is going to be the best indicator that this is going to benefit students, or they're not going to feel that way. And then, of course, the same for you all. What is the very specific goal and objective of bringing on this tool? So with that, we're going to quickly talk about health promotion tools. And again, I'm going to go a little bit quick through this information, so please feel free to jump in with any questions. One more question. Question on referrals tools. Can the public access the list of clinicians? This is not my area of expertise. I do not believe so. I believe all of these networks are open only to students within your campus community. I'm not sure if access is granted with a student email or what that might be. I'd be happy to look into that and follow up with you, or you can obviously reach out to any of those providers directly. Thank you for all the questions. So jumping into health promotion tools, this obviously is so important nowadays because a lot of the normal activities and services available to students are no longer accessible. So with that, again, providing a high level of some tools out there. There's You at College, which obviously I know the most about because that's the organization I work with. There's Sanvello, there's Headspace, there's 7 Cups. We're also launching another app called Nod to help with the challenge of loneliness on campus. And to give a quick preview of some of the questions we really recommend asking is, what sort of data is out there that supports the efficacy of these tools? And making sure that all of these organizations have an evidence-based structure and are committed to evaluation to be able to show and prove that they are indeed moving the needle on health promotion is incredibly important. And then the other major question is addressing the issue of student engagement. You can have the best evidence-based tool out there, but if students aren't using it, that's an incredibly unfortunate scenario. So with that, the approach that we took is making more than just a mental health tool. And we have 3 domains about Thrive is about physical and mental health, Succeed is about academics and career success, and Matter is all about purpose and connection. And why that's been so meaningful is this tool has been harnessed by all of campus because residents, advising, athletics, all of these other departments have just as much of a stake in this to promote to their students. So engagement has been incredibly high. And then the other thing, I was just recommended to turn off my webcam because my internet is slow. Is everyone still seeing my screen? Would anyone mind confirming that?
Yep.
Great, thank you. So sorry I had to shut that off for a second. So the other thing that's very important is making sure that all of the information in these health promotion tools is updated on an ongoing basis. So in our world, we very quickly were able to make over 40 pieces of online evidence-based and evidence-informed resources related to coping with COVID. Everything from mental health, coping with isolation, to how to be a good online student when I didn't choose to be an online student user. And we've actually seen that 73% of all of our utilization on the platform has been COVID-19 related. And we've seen over a 200% increase in our campuses who are using that as part of their response. One other app that we'll be launching is called Nod. It's an app to combat the issue of loneliness on campus. And again, I'm just going to skip ahead. One thing that's very important, again, I know I'm alluding to a lot of the questions to ask, is making sure that the model is rooted in science. So this is an impact pathway behind NOD, what the psychological targets are that we are addressing with NOD, what the short-term outcomes are, and the long-term outcomes in our instance. We've also done a randomized control trial and indeed are able to say that we are significantly increasing depression as well as loneliness among student users. And there's one question on health promotion tools. What were the other two tools? You at College Sandvello, Headspace, 7 Cups. I'm forgetting the couple off the top of my head, but when we do distribute these slides, you will absolutely be able to reference those. The last thing I want to mention about NOD is we will be launching a free version of that this coming Tuesday that will be open to any and all college students. We initially made it for students to connect in the real world with real people, which of course is not something we want to promote. So we're adapting that to help students both maintain and deepen their social connections in light of social or physical distancing, as I like to call it. So if anyone's interested, I'm happy to provide you information on that. Again, it's going to be free and accessible to any college student. So questions to ask when it comes to health promotion tools. Of course, understanding the pricing model is incredibly important, whether it's based on total enrollment, per use, some things are per user, per month. Make sure you really understand the ins and outs of that. Another piece is making sure that students are involved in the co-design process of whatever these apps are. When students are co-designing, that really increases the likelihood of students wanting to use these select apps. As I mentioned, making sure that research and evaluation is a core tenet of whatever organization you are potentially working with is essential. And then, as Meladee alluded to, making sure that there is some sort of marketing toolkit or promotions or a social marketing toolkit is incredibly important, because the last thing you want is a great evidence-based app, but to have to do a ton of work to really promote it to your students. So make sure that you feel armed in that department. Asking about updates, as I just mentioned, being sure that your content can very quickly shift is very important. Understanding the policies and terms of use for your students. Of course, your procurement departments will ask all those questions as well, but it's nice for you all to know. And then this last one's very important. What sort of data will you be provided as a counseling center or dean of students or whatever your role might be on campus? For example, we provide all our aggregate data back to the universities so that in real time, they're able to see what are the most challenging or most pressing issues for certain demographics of students on campus. And that can be incredibly valuable for resource planning, developing new programs, identifying populations or demographics of students who might not be getting adequate attention that they deserve in respects to mental health. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, and very quickly, we can just decide how we want to use the rest of our time to be most effective in our last 6 minutes. Oh, so Meladee, I believe this is all yours.
So I wanted to add in quickly, based on Nathaan's information. What's great right now is a lot of these applications and also the online self-help programs are offering some free resources in the midst of COVID-19. And so I would encourage people, like if you've been considering, in particular, like TAO, their whole mindfulness library is available to the public. And as Nathaan was just saying, NOD come next Tuesday is going to be available to any student. And so I know a lot of these wellness, self-help, mental health type programs are becoming free to the public in general, or in particular college students or mental health care workers. And so this is a great way to kind of test out and explore some of these if you've considered them. I know we only have a few minutes left, so there was also some in-person programs, innovative programs that we were going to talk about in our original presentation of ways that you can get innovative in person. And so a lot of those are around your peer or coach support programs, the use of single session therapy. So again, does someone really need therapy, or they just need to kind of check in with someone? And so we've implemented single sessions here at the UCI Counseling Center, as well as Let's Talk or drop-in services can be really great as a way to provide brief consultation appointments so they're not flooding your urgent care or walk-in systems, as well as it may prevent someone from having to wait 2 weeks who may not actually need therapy. And it's a great way to get them connected to your self-help program. And so I know I'm going over these really quickly, but there's also ways to think of innovative ways of expanding your resources in person through easily accessible options, whether it's a coach program, single session therapy, or drop-in services. And I think we'll have Marcelle.
Yeah, I just want to close real quick in the 30 seconds I have to close. I know NASPA wants to make a few closing remarks. We want to thank you all, and I want to thank my co-presenters. I want to thank you all for your attention. I think if there's one thing we want to leave you with, there's lots of technology, lots of ways to engage students, psychoeducation, apps. But the point is that we need to engage everybody, that mental health does not reside inside the counseling center solely. And so listen to what students want, partner with your health center, with your health promotion center, with the faculty, with other students to pilot programs, step outside your comfort zone. I've never used GoToWebinar before, but here I am. So step outside your comfort zone to help meet student needs, listen to what they want, and then take some lessons back to you when we all get back to work after COVID-19. Start small and build. And with that, we had some questions. I think we've been kind of answering questions periodically. So I think, and wish you all the best of luck in getting students to engage in their mental health. Thank you all so much. We'll turn it back over to NASPA. Or not.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And we definitely want to give a big thank you to our speakers for engaging with us in such an insightful conversation, especially in the midst of the situation that we're dealing with globally. And we especially want to thank everybody who has logged in today and has been super interactive in the chat and has been able to provide their wonderful feedback and also ask a lot of different questions. We do apologize in advance if we were unable to have your specific question answered today. We also wanted to let you know that at some point within the next week, you will be receiving a link to this recording, so you will have access to the PowerPoint and the recorded webinar session. We look forward for everyone's continuous engagement through our different social media platforms and to look out for more content. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.